Yeah, absolutely. Your content is very educational, and I think, especially in this day and age, especially in the Western world, very necessary because you kind of touch on subjects that are such a pain point for many.
Yeah.
And is your main focus then relationships and families, or?
You know what? I actually specialize in trauma, and that's where I actually specialize. But the thing is, social media loves relationships, and social
Yes.
media loves talking about men and women. And so, because of that, I end up talking a lot about relationships. But my actual specialism is childhood and development, and how trauma can affect later mental health issues. But I use it a lot to explain relationship and relationship traumas and relationship problems, and just general like advice in terms of relationships, but only because social media loves it the most. I personally think it's really important just to understand trauma in general, but social media loves relationships. It seems to be the topic of conversation at all times, especially when it's anything pitting men against women. That seems to go viral quite quickly on TikTok. Do you find that as well?
100%.
It's crazy. It's so bad, isn't it? When you say something educational, it won't get that many views, but you say something triggering and it will go viral. So unfortunately, that's kind of the essence of social media.
Yes, 100%. I find whenever I post anything related to, for example, man paying for a bill at a
Yeah.
restaurant and a woman
Mhm.
not paying for the bill, or those kinds of things,
Yeah.
instantly the video goes viral.
I know, and it's
And
a shame, isn't it, that they love it when you are divisive. It's great. I mean, it's interesting content. It leads to engagement, but because my goal is actually to try and help people build more healthy relationships, it's maybe not ideal for that, but it is what it is. You got to play the game at some point.
yeah, well, and in the meantime, when people notice you, they start to watch your other videos that are, maybe less contentious and less
Yeah,
controversial, but they're educational. So
yeah.
you do provide value,
Oh, thank you.
either way. Yeah, no, for sure.
Thank you.
How much does trauma affect relationships later in life, romantic relationships?
If it goes unhealed almost entirely, I think people are so. What they'll say is statements like, I keep attracting this type of person, or I always end up with this type of person, almost like it's not their fault. But the reality is, it's not your fault, but it is our unconscious decision making. So we might actually seek out and be comfortable with people that are going to hurt us. And that's usually because of childhood. If you feel like you have a continuous pattern of meeting men that cheat on you, or women that use you, or whatever it is, whatever your patterns are, take a minute to understand it and realize where it comes from, because it's no accident that patterns keep repeating themselves. And it's no accident that maybe you always get jealous in relationships, or maybe you always get distant in relationships. None of these are accidents. They're literally a result of your trauma. And if it goes unresolved, you'll find that relationships become a catalogue of all the same negative experiences. But if it goes checked, you can actually transform that into healthy connections, which is what we should all be aiming for.
Yeah.
Mm.
Does it all then come from childhood trauma, mostly?
People say no. People say it's also like your life experiences as well. But what I feel is that childhood sets the tone, and then you can meet a terrible ex that also exaggerates those existing traumas. But I would say for example, if I grew up in an abusive home, chances are when I meet an abusive man, the average person who hasn't had that experience would immediately let go of that man and wouldn't even entertain that situation. But when you come from abusive homes, you see that as normal and you accept more than you should. And then that person reignites your trauma. And then the next person reignites your trauma. And you think it's an ex, but it's usually coming more from something, baseline from childhood.
That's so interesting, hey? If you dig
Yeah.
deep into childhood, you can almost always find answers to the
Yeah,
problems.
you can, and you can almost explain your exes. If you've got terrible cheating exes, you can almost explain that from childhood as well. So everything kind of starts from there, and it doesn't have to be parents. It can be aunt, uncle, grandparent, friends being bullied. Anything that kind of sets the tone of or creates a core belief of how you view yourself will then trickle into relationships.
So interesting.
Mhm.
I've heard somewhere that often people basically seek almost like comfort. So some kind of trauma and some kind of bad experience that they had in childhood, if they almost recreated again in adult life,
Yeah.
it's in a very messed up way their comfort because that's the only thing that they know. So
Yeah.
for them to actually deviate from that and find someone who, treats them nicely is stepping out of their comfort zone.
Exactly that. What happens is you seek what's familiar, not what you need. And some people are just familiar and comfortable in chaos. When they're with a partner who's actually not triggering them, not making them feel jealous, not making them feel alert, not making them feel vulnerable, anxious, they almost think that this is too boring. I must not be in love. They need to feel passion. They need to feel anger. They need to feel hostility in order to label that as love. And that's because that's what they were demonstrated growing up. The household was hostile. And you meet people who are in healthy relationships, and what healthy relationships look like is they're very predictable and stable and almost boring, but in a healthy, they're monotonous. And that's what healthy relationships look like. But if you come from a chaotic background, you would not even go close to that situation, because you would see it as empty, boring, unfulfilling, and you would leave that person on the side to chase somebody who's going to make you feel almost punished the way you did in your childhood.
Yeah. I feel like if I hadn't been that person, we sure all know somebody who,
Yeah.
Even listening to this, some of our listeners will be like, oh my God, I totally know a person who's definitely experiencing something like
And
that,
I'm definitely like that. I've got elements of that. And I think this is a misconception people think is when you know it, you can cure it. But it's not like that. Like I have tendencies, I will get jealous or I'll get angry and I'll fear abandonment really quickly and easily and sensitively. And I have to kind of process my own therapy on myself to stop me from sabotaging. But it's something that is in most people. You're incredibly gifted and lucky if you can come out of childhood unscathed, because parents don't know how to parent. No one teaches them. So you're incredibly gifted if you do manage that, but you're rare, and majority of people have some kind of scars.
Yeah, for sure. There's no manual that teaches you how to be a good parent.
Yeah, and they're doing the best they can. Most parents are doing the best they can. They don't realize things are traumatic. So, for example, like in my culture, it's very normal to criticize and be like, oh, you've gained weight, you've lost weight, you look terrible, and there's no filter. And in no way do they think they're traumatizing you. They just think that they're giving you healthy, criticism. But it can actually lead to low self-esteem and, have the core belief that you're not good enough. But they don't realize that, and they don't mean it in that way. So you almost have to lead with forgiveness, but also change, like break the cycle.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's my culture is very blunt. Like people here have no filter, and they just say whatever's on their mind, no matter to who's this. It's very similar, You have to kind of analyze and just think about it in a way that they meant well. My aunt or my mom or my dad, they just meant well. They didn't actually mean to make me feel a certain way. Yeah.
Of course.
That is so interesting. And when it comes to healthy relationships, would you say, does it happen often when, for example, someone who comes out of an abusive, family, or something not so pleasant was happening in the childhood, they go the opposite direction? So instead of repeating that same pattern, they somehow grow up, even though without needing any actual help from a professional, they go into a whole other direction and right away find someone who actually treats them well.
Yeah, that can definitely happen. And you see that a lot with men that grew up without fathers. One of the things that they'll do is becoming brilliant fathers. They'll really want to compensate for that, losing their father and not having that figure in their life. So they'll become brilliant fathers, but almost overcompensate, give so much to the children, so much time, but they'll still have elements of self-sabotaging. And what that might look like is they're a great father, do all of these things, but they might cheat on their partner until eventually the relationship breaks down, or they might argue a lot or do something that's some element of self-sabotaging. So they might fix that particular symptom where they're like, okay, my father left me, I'm going to make sure I'm a great father. But you need modeling to be a great husband, and those types of things, if it's not modeled for you, it becomes difficult. And the biggest blessing you can have is if your first relationship ends up being a blessing, where that person models what healthy relationships looks like and brings you into their home and shows you that. But again, that becomes quite difficult because people with healthy backgrounds tend to find other people with healthy backgrounds. They almost match each other because they speak the same healthy language. And people from toxic backgrounds almost by nature empathize and click with other people from unhealthy backgrounds, and it can lead to that dynamic.
How do you recognize self-sabotage? If, for example, if I'm doing something and I don't even realize that I'm doing it, what can I do to analyze my actions so that I can better understand if I'm sabotaging myself?
Right, self-sabotage, essentially, it comes from a place of fear. What self-sabotage is that you have this intense fear that whatever blessing you're experiencing at the moment, it's going to go at some point. It's going to go and it's going to hurt you. So the best thing you can do is cause yourself predictable pain by creating circumstances that lead to the breakdown of that relationship, or assuming that this tiny issue is a huge issue, run away now before they hurt you even more. And what that might look like is picking fights over small things. It might also look like finding flaws in your partner, focusing on the flaws, and or it might look like not appreciating all the good that they do, and any reminder of a bad behavior, you keep bringing it up. And essentially what you try and do is you create distance between you and your partner. Instead of creating connection, you're trying to create distance, whether that's through fighting, whether that's through talking to other people, whether that's through replying late and playing these games. These are all self-sabotaging. And how you recognize it is just ask yourself, is what you're doing right now actually going to make you happy? The answer is no, then you're self-sabotaging. So for example, if I think, oh, I'm going to reply really late today and I'm not going to even pick up his calls, I'm just going to ignore him, does that actually make you happy? Does that make your relationship better? If the answer is no, it's self-sabotaging. If the answer is yes, fine, you can do that, but chances are it won't make you any happier.
Yeah. Ouch. It's and I love how you mentioned fear, because it almost applies not even just to relationships, it applies to everything in life, right? When you are about to jump on a really exciting opportunity of some sort and you right away almost start feeling like you don't deserve it. I'm sure all of us have experienced it in all areas.
People do it with money. People do it a lot with money. They'll make a lot of money and blow it, or they'll make a lot of money or randomly waste it, or they'll, even small things, drive really fast and collect a lot of fines, or things that are so avoidable and totally free to avoid, but they sabotage money because there's a part of them that doesn't want to, doesn't feel comfortable without some kind of monetary worry, because that's maybe how they grew up. So they need some element of worry regarding money, because being completely independent of financial woes feels weird. So people do it with all sorts of things in life. It's more prominent in relationships, but that's just a symptom of actual self-sabotage. It can manifest in lots of ways.
Ooh, the money one is so interesting. Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna have to have you back on just to talk about like other stuff, because there's there's just like so many things that I'm like, I want to dive into that so deep.
Yeah, I do it a lot with money. It's like I will collect a lot of fines. I'll drive particularly fast when I don't mean to. I'll deliberately like not be as careful as I should, so I'll scratch a new car or whatever it is. And it's that carelessness for possessions that is almost, and I used to think it made me, oh, I must not be a materialistic person and I'm so great. But really it's a case of you don't believe you deserve nice things. And so you almost sabotage what you have. And that's really what it stems from.
For sure. Yeah. That deservability of not believing that you deserve nice things, it's like, when you say that, I'm like getting goosebumps, because we've all experienced it, right? And to get to that new level of believing that you deserve something better, something nicer, is a process that you need to like walk yourself through. You need to make yourself really believe that, okay, this is for me, I can do this, and I deserve this. Otherwise, you feel uncomfortable.
And it's at work, it's with relationships. When you meet someone loving and kind, you almost get suspicious, because you're like, this doesn't feel right. You must be up to something. And then you look for problems, and that's where the self-sabotaging comes in. So it's a real disease, self-sabotage, because you'll get to a certain age and you would have realize that you've broken a lot of connections for no real reason, and it's heartbreaking. It's something that we should definitely check into, because it is quite heartbreaking when you reflect on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Wow, self-sabotage. Oh, we can keep talking and talking about it. I wanted to chat with you about something that I saw in your one of your videos. Vulnerability versus being overly emotional for
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sadia Khan, and you might know me as a leading dating coach in modern relationships today. I work with men every single day to help give them the blueprint of understanding relationships, women, attraction, and self-esteem. So if you are feeling stuck in your relationships and you want to unlock your full potential, work with me today by clicking on the link, and I look forward to hearing from you.